Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today in Chaos Tactics I'm looking at the Deathshroud, taking a first look there, also comparing the Lord of Virulence buff for the Deathshroud compared to the Blightlords. So with no further ado, let's take a look at the elite infantry of the Death Guard. So today the 8th of June, and as I said in this video, focusing on the Deathshroud Terminators, looking at their datasheet that was revealed, the damage output in both shooting and melee, and then focusing a little bit on the Lord of Virulence effect. Is it better used on Deathshroud with their Plague Pistols, Plague Spear Gauntlets, or with the Blightlords as we saw yesterday? So looking at the Deathshroud datasheet, the normal, let's say, the stats here, we have, like the Blightlord Terminators, reduced to 4-inch move, which is not very good, of course. Toughness 6, improving one pip here. 2+ save, 4+ invul save. So basically, just like the Blightlords, they have a silent bodyguard ability, which means that when they are led by a character model, so for example, that would probably be Typhus, Lord of Virulence, or Lord of Contagion. As you saw in my Typhus video, I also calculated a little bit how he could help with a -1 to be hit. Then the Deathshroud Terminators, they get improved durability versus anything that attacks them with strength 7 or higher. So then the enemy must subtract 1 from the wound roll. This means they can never be wounded on a 2+. They can maximum be wounded on a 3+ from a strength 12 and higher, and between strength 7 and strength 11, then they would only be wounded by a 4+. So and their weaponry is the pistol, the Plague Spear Gauntlet. Now it's a pistol, so that's quite useful into close combat as well. It's anti-infantry 4+, still strength 3, AP 0, damage 1. But as anti-infantry 4+, you would always be wounding on a 4+ versus infantry. You can't expect it to do a lot of damage versus something like vehicles, as we will see on the next table. Then we have their melee weapons. Of course, the Deathshroud are a powerhouse in melee. They still have their best damage output in melee. So we have their Man Reaper with 2 profiles. And here we can see the strike profile has the lethal hits, and also the sweep profile has the now maybe Death Guard signature lethal hits. So 6 is to hit, auto wound. And then for the strike profile, we have 4 attacks. We are hitting on 2+, which is quite good. Previously, we had hitting only on 3+ on the strike profile. Strength 8, AP -2, damage 2, so overall improvement on the strike. But we see the sweep profile, this has been nerfed quite a bit. So only 6 attacks, you only get 2 more attacks. You're hitting on 2+, and then strength 5, AP 0, very lackluster, and damage 1. So very, very difficult to do anything with this. Let's say with AP 0 on Terminators, that's save on 2+. Not very helpful. The AP -2, of course, much stronger in this edition. And of course, it could be interesting to combine the Deathshroud Terminator in melee with a Sangous Flux stratagem that when they are fighting in the fight phase, you get sustained hit 1. So 4 attacks with a strike, you would be on 6 to hit, you get exploding hit, so you would get an auto wound and roll an additional roll for the wound roll. And if you are near an objective, you can get sustained hit 2. I'll show you the effect on the next table. So here we have the Deathshroud's damage output. So in the table you see the various weapons of the Deathshroud, and then you see in the columns you have different targets from 10th edition, and the numbers are the damage inflicted, taking into account, for example, if you are attacking with a 2-wound weapon on a 1-wound model, you are basically the damage is capped at 1 wound in this scenario. And then the commas in the table for the numbers is the decimal point, so don't get confused by that. So 0.9 means 0.9 damage. So we started with a Plague Spear Gauntlet, anti-infantry 4+. We see, let's say, one gauntlet would be killing 1 Termagant on average, but if we go to something like Terminators or something like this, or vehicles, we have 0.3 wounds or 0.2 wounds versus the vehicles. So of course, not very efficient versus very high toughness targets, and also the targets that have 2+ saves. Then we move into the melee. So we have the strike and the sweep profile compared here. And previously, I made some videos to try to say when can you use the strike and when to use the sweep. But as you can see in this table, almost all the time it's just better to use the strike profile. There is no point in the sweep profile, not even versus Termagants here. So in this case, they give the same value against the let's say the less the most horde type enemy in this table. And you see already from Necron Warriors, you're better with a strike profile. So we can kill almost 2 intercessors with a strike profile, and we can only do 1 wound with a sweep profile. So much better to use a strike profile for nearly all the targets. And then in the below you can see, for example, 5 Deathshroud. If I take a big squad of Deathshroud shooting at 12 inches, you can see the damage output. And here I also added, if we have a Lord of Virulence leading this squad, giving full rerolls to wound, we can see an improvement in the damage output. And I'll compare the effect with the Blightlords in the next page. So for example, if we have 5 Deathshroud shooting, they would be doing 3.5 wounds here versus intercessors. With the Lord of Virulence buff, this will increase to 5 wounds, 5.3 wounds. For Terminators, they save quite well anyway, but with the Lord of Virulence buff and with a bit of luck, you might be able to kill 1 Terminator or one Blightlord Terminator in this example. If we move on to vehicles, 1-2 wounds from the shooting, even with the Lord of Virulence buff. It's not an anti-vehicle gauntlet. But then when we look at them in melee, using their strike profile, the sweep profile basically doesn't make so much sense. Here they are still very strong in melee. So we can do 11 wounds against Terminators, 9 wounds against the Blightlords, 13 wounds and 10 wounds versus vehicles here. So that's quite nice. But this is, of course, a big squad of 5 Deathshroud. If we combine them with the Sangous Flux stratagem giving sustained hits, you see an increase in the damage. If this is near an objective, you can see 15 wounds on Terminators here. Then you would be wiping a big 5-man squad of Terminators. So 5 Deathshroud with the objective, near an objective with the stratagems, could be taking out a whole squad of enemy Terminators here. 27 wounds on intercessors, so wiping big chunks of Marines, especially let's say with his stratagems. 11 wounds on an Armiger, 13 wounds on some other vehicles here. So they can do still quite a lot of damage in melee. And then a lot of discussion in the forums. What is best for the Lord of Virulence? Where do you get most bang for your buck? To buff Deathshroud or Blightlords in the shooting? Yesterday I did the video on the Blightlord damage output with Lord of Virulence. So in this table I'm comparing the effect of adding Lord of Virulence on 5 Deathshroud Terminators or 10-man Blightlord Terminators. The problem with the Blightlord Terminators, if we call it a problem, is that if the Blightlord Terminators choose the closest enemy to shoot, they already have the ability to reroll once to wound. So when you add the Lord of Virulence, you get some effect by rerolling all to wound, but it's not so strong comparatively in this case. The Lord of Virulence gives a decent extra effect on, let's say, 5 Deathshroud. They don't have any innate way to reroll to wound roll. So here you get, let's say, a bigger effect. So adding, for example, the Lord of Virulence to 5 Deathshroud, you would add 3 wounds with the buff to Termagants. You would add 2.6 wounds on Necron Warriors, 1.8 wound on Intercessors. And if you see a 10-man Blightlord squad, if the Intercessors are the closest model, adding the Lord of Virulence gives you only 1.4 more wounds. When you move up to Terminators, then the Lord of Virulence has a bigger effect on a big blob of Blightlord Terminators. But again, the effect is not as strong if they are already targeting the closest model. If they don't target the closest model, you get, of course, a better yield from adding the Lord of Virulence to Blightlord Terminators. So, reaching the summary and final thoughts of this short look on the Deathshroud. The Deathshroud are still high melee damage output. The strike profile is now basically the only thing you need to choose and need to consider. Almost always a better choice than the sweep profile that has become quite lackluster with AP 0 on only 6 attacks compared to the 4 attacks of the strike profile. Strike profile hitting on 2 pluses, strength 8, AP -2, damage 2, much better choice versus almost all targets. The Plague Spurt gauntlets can do some anti-infantry damage, can be buffed quite nicely by the Lord of Virulence, and as a pistol now, they can be shot into engagement range, where you also would be getting some benefit from the -1 toughness contagion. The Sangous Flux strat, you can, if you really need to take out something in melee, then consider using that, especially near an objective. They can be wiping out a big squad of enemy Terminators, and maybe, hopefully, the Lord of Contagion could be bringing something to the table. Could we get some hit rerolls? The hit rerolls would be helping, especially for let's say lethal hit weapons in general. For Death Guard, it's quite interesting that most of our weapons now have lethal hits, but our army-wide ability of -1 toughness basically involves the wound roll, where the lethal hits makes auto wounding, so they don't play so well together. But if we could get some hit rerolls to fish for more auto wounds, that could be maybe some better dynamic here. So this concludes the video. What do you think about the Deathshroud? Let me know in the comments. If you want to support my efforts bringing you all this type of analysis almost every day, please visit my Patreon page or become a YouTube member. If you want to take part of more discussion, you can also visit the Discord channel in the link in the description. And with these words, GeneralJannis signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.